first met Elizabeth Wilhelm in 2018 when I was a fellow working at TED doing research on vaccines. And someone said, "You've got to meet this woman called Liz. She's so smart and she talks at the same speed as you do. In fact, she's like your American doppelganger." And we've been good friends ever since because I met her and realized that there were some similarities. And I'm so excited about this session because I've been so excited about this project. So for those of you who don't know Liz, she has worked in the global public health space for organizations like the CDC, UNICEF, USAID, and played leadership roles during the COVID-19 response, both here in the US and globally. And in other exciting news, she's just started her PhD at the University of West Attica in Greece, where she's focusing on the intersection between our modern information environment, midwives, the people they care for, and health equity in Europe. But before we go any further, I also just want to stop to thank some people, some of whom are on this call, but the WHO Infodemic Management Team in Geneva and leadership there, in particular, Tim Nguyen, Sylvie Briand, and Tina Panat for their leadership and friendship in the infodemic management space. They inspired a global conversation about the risk and harms of health misinformation and fostered a public health response to address information environment challenges that affected people's health everywhere during the pandemic. And what I'm also excited about today is joining Liz is Zion and Hui, who are co-authors and collaborators on this project and worked closely with Liz over the last year. And they built and thought about this toolkit and have tested the tool. And today, what's so exciting, this isn't just a usual webinar, is that we're going to have a workshop where we test out some of those techniques. Because fundamentally, our information ecosystems are driven by stories. As we're seeing with the current obsession/conspiracies around Kate Middleton, conspiracies are based on stories that capture your imagination. Unfortunately, disinformation actors are much better at telling stories than we are, researchers, public health practitioners, and government spokespeople. So workshops like this that center people's stories are everything to me. So I'm going to thank Liz and her collaborators, Zion and Hui, and I hand over the floor so you can take us through this process. And I hope you enjoy this as much as I know I'm going to.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're really excited about this workshop. We have folks tuning in from all over the world, as well as from Brown University. So we're really glad that you're here. And if you hadn't introduced yourself, feel free to say where you're coming from and how you found us in the chat. So we really want to spend the most of our hour together today to doing the fun interactive bits of road testing some of these components of this toolkit. So I'm going to go relatively quickly introducing what we're doing today, and then we're going to dive right in. And Zion and we are going to help me along in this process, along with a lovely group of facilitators from the Information Futures Lab. So why are we all here today? Is really thinking about COVID and the stories and the experiences that we have, just like many other health topics, and ways that we try to find and health information and concerns and questions and try to get answers to some of the mysteries of just day-to-day living. And during the pandemic, that was really heightened. So today we really are thinking about understanding how the information environment really affects all of us, how we share stories with one another on a health topic like COVID that has affected all of us as a case study. We'll use those hands-on techniques that Claire had described earlier for analyzing stories in a virtual space. And we'll learn about a new guide that we have been able to publish with the Brown University's Information Futures Lab that uses stories to analyze and understand community health needs. Now, what's interesting about this approach is that we collect stories from a community and then we have community members analyze those stories. And based on that analysis, we can really understand how does the information environment or how do social pressures and social norms and our day-to-day lives affect us and our health and our well-being. And if we can do that, we can help come up with better solutions to health problems that we face. And we're going to use COVID as the example today, but you can apply this to many different contexts. So we did a quick introduction. We'll give you instructions and moving into breakouts. We'll do 2 rounds of discussion groups in these breakout discussions, and then we'll do a plenary where we come back and discuss together, and then we'll introduce the guide and close. And we'll accomplish all of this within an hour. So let's see if we can manage to do that. So first of all, what do we mean when we say the modern information environment? We have a lot of information coming at us all the time, which can affect our health. Seeking health information can also be challenging in such an environment. We're always trying to find ways of coping, sharing, and connecting with others by communicating in new and old ways. And that information environment can contain questions, concerns, information voids where we're looking for information, but we can't find it. But it can also include misinformation and disinformation. And all of that is just propelled by anxiety and other heightened emotions, especially during emergencies or crises. So that's what we're thinking about. That's what we're talking about today. It's not just misinformation that affects our health and our healthcare decisions. So we can relate to the world and health topics by sharing stories. And today we're test driving parts of this methodology we discussed by telling each other stories on a health topic that we've all experienced, COVID-19. This is just a taster. There's a far more in-depth toolkit that we'll link to later on where you can try this out at home as well. And you're welcome to take it, use it, remix it, and apply it to your own setting and your topic of interest. The larger toolkit was designed for health workers, community members, nonprofits, or public health professionals, or even academics to identify themes and solutions to common information environment challenges that communities experience on health and social topics. So, like I said, much of today will be around discussion. So here are some ground rules that we'd like to propose for all of us when we are discussing our experiences in the COVID times. You know, we've all lived through COVID. This is a judgment-free zone. Pajamas or pants too. We only really want to share what you're comfortable sharing. And this is a quote from Zion, which I think is great. What is said here stays here, but what is learned here leaves. So please do take that to heart. And then you want to tell a story that you experienced. Describe the situation, what happened, and how you felt, and ask questions. So what COVID stories are we going to share today? So there's 6 different topics, and you'll be randomly sorted into one of these groups. And so those groups are love and relationships in the time of COVID, learning and teaching, missing milestones, technology, the first time I got COVID, supply chain, and groceries. And we think we all probably have something to contribute to several of these topics if we thought about it. And so you're welcome to think about your experiences and reflect on them. Don't worry, you're not doing this in a vacuum. You have a lovely facilitator in the room that you're going to that will help you work through this process. So how will this work? So we're going to ask you to generate stories, and in the real world, when you use this toolkit, the story doesn't fit on a sticky note. But for the purposes of today's session, because we only have an hour, we're going to ask to find the poet inside of you and turn your thoughtful, beautiful long story into 2 sentences. And so here are some examples of COVID stories. I graduated high school on Zoom. I wasn't prepared for college in real life, but I wasn't the only one. Or I was worried about my sister who's immunocompromised all the time. I still wear a mask and people give me looks, but I have stopped trying to argue. And then this is the crowd favorite. The pandemic puppy was a terrible idea for a relationship. He said, it's the dog or me. I ended the pandemic a single happy dog mom. So, you know, these contain multitudes, right? And so when we think about these stories, there are similar stories in our experiences that resonate with these stories and why. And so we'll talk about that in both of our discussion groups. So for round 1, you will have 15 minutes. There will be a magic button that Sam will push, and you'll be transported instantly into a breakout room where we'll ask you to share at least one story and then consolidate it on a tiny sticky note, a virtual sticky note on the screen. And you're welcome to share then more than one story if you'd like, but try for at least one story. So share your story in the group, and then those will be put on a virtual sticky board that will be projected in your group. Then we'll come back together again, discuss, and then we'll go back into round 2. Are you guys ready? Are we ready for the magic button to be pressed? And some of you might not go anywhere because you'll stay in the main room with me. So don't worry if you're not transported anywhere, you're in the main room with me. Are you guys ready? All right, let's see if we can hit the magic button and move to our rooms. All right, well, people who are here still in the main room, I'm going to pull up our Jamboard. Otherwise, go have fun in your rooms. It's going to be great. And I'm going to find our appropriate board. All right.
I love a Jamboard. I
So
learned about them from my friend Samantha Stanley.
I just saw the saddest thing. There's now a pop-up that says Jamboard is going away October 1st. So it might not be long for this world, but we're going to use it while we can. When we've done this in the real world, we've used Miro, but you can use many other technologies. You can also do this, you know, with actual sticky boards on an actual table if you so desire. All right, can y'all see all that? We're on the learning and teaching. Have people been relatively successfully moved to their breakouts?
I believe so. I think there are a couple of people here who belong to breakout rooms. So yep, I think we'll probably trickle out a little bit, but for the most part, I think we're safe to get started here.
Okay, great. So who do we have in this room? Welcome, welcome everybody. Oh, it's nice to see some familiar faces and places and names. Okay, so our first prompt that we're doing here is on learning and teaching. And let me see if I can, first of all, let me pop the link to the chat. So you're also welcome to add to this board. We are board number 2 of 12. So you just want to hit the little right button if you'd like to add it yourself. To it yourself, but otherwise we will I'm happy to copy and paste and note take for you if you would like. So our topic is learning and teaching. And let's see if I can zoom in a little bit so it's not so teeny weeny. Oops, that's the wrong way. Let's try that again. All right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in this example, here's an example story under learning and teaching. I remember it being really hard to pay attention to being in online class. How was I supposed to feel connected to the classroom when I would just be staring into a void of blank, right? So that's one example of a story that someone might experience. And so we have little orange stickies on the left-hand side to trigger some potential discussions or story ideas that you might have that you'd like to share. How did COVID affect your learning or teaching trajectory? I think all of us were learning or teaching to some degree, or we had family members that were learning or teaching. You can also share those stories. But we've all been coping in new ways during the pandemic. How did you make efforts to connect with others in your educational space? So if you were in trainings or learning, how did you connect with others if you weren't able to connect in person? What hurdles did you overcome to keep learning and teaching? And what is the story of something you failed at and learned from through the experience of COVID? So thinking about what were your lessons learned from the COVID pandemic? And what is the one thing the experience of the pandemic has taught you? What is the most important thing? And are there any new areas or interests that you learned more during the time of COVID? Like I know a lot of people took up baking and making sourdough bread, for example, right? Others found entirely new interests and hobbies. But maybe I'll turn it over to you all. You're welcome to just take yourself off mute if you want to share a story. And then if you'd like, I'm happy to generate the story here for you on a sticky note while you're talking. Anybody
Liz,
feeling brave?
before we start feeling brave, I do just want to remind everyone that we're here in the main session where things are being recorded. So keep that in mind as you decide to share. We will share this video afterwards. So
Yes, that's
wanted to
important
remind us
piece of
all of that.
information.
Also, if you're just joining us, I might bring you into a separate room to explain to you what's going on since this is an interactive activity. So don't mind us, Liz, if some of us pop in and out of this room.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. Does anybody want to share their story of learning and teaching in the time of COVID?
I'm happy to start.
All right,
Liz,
Claire, go ahead.
rolling. Yeah, so what I love so much about this and reflecting on the pandemic is, of course, the dark times, but also I think when we're forced to stop and think, we recognize that there were also strengths. And so I did a lot of teaching during the pandemic. And what I realized was that I couldn't rely on, oh, somebody's in the room, I've got their attention. Like I was having to teach people who were also on email at the same time and looking at Twitter. And so it forced me to really think about the learner experience much more than I had had before. And that people can only concentrate for a short space of time. So I had to think much more creatively about the ways that I was teaching. So yeah, it was a challenge, but also I felt like I'm a much better teacher coming out the other side. So that to me was a surprise that I didn't expect. And I think those people who just resisted, said, oh, Zoom's terrible. I think there was a reason they were resisting because it was challenging us. It was moving us out of our comfort zone. So yeah, that's my story.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
I'll share. So I actually found an unexpected community around teaching and learning during the pandemic that taught me a lot of the tools and tricks that I like to push on all of you. Which was a great surprise because I moved from Hong Kong to Colorado, which are very different places, like at the very start of the pandemic, and I was doing my PhD and I was feeling very lonely and isolated. So actually coming into this online community of people who care a lot about digital pedagogy was satiating in a lot of ways, but it allowed me to stay connected to a community that I didn't necessarily know that well prior. And I learned so much from so many different kinds of educators, from people teaching photography to, people teaching civic media, people teaching all kinds of different things, and just sharing, what's working for them through all different grade levels online. So that was an unexpected treat.
Great. Anyone else want to share their experience? Did someone have a different experience? Okechi, I know you have something to say on the subject.
Consider Alice, who's walking down the street and wondering what time it is. She glances up at the clock and sees that the hands show 4:30. Suppose that's right, and the clock is working fine. Ordinarily, we'd say, now Alice knows that it's 4:30. But if we highlight something that could have gone wrong, sometimes clocks are broken, and Alice didn't look long enough to be sure.
Uh-oh, I think we lost you, Maya. Oh dear.
Can you hear me? Because I can hear in the background somebody listening, reading something.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
It's strange because I can hear somebody reading something about Alice, which is great, but it's nothing what I expected.
Oh,
so I don't know.
us either.
Yeah.
Did you have something to share?
Yeah, if I could share something with you, that would be great. So, in my opinion, teaching during the COVID pandemic poses significant challenges, but also opened really new adventure and innovation in education. And then, in my opinion, it opened new ways of teaching and learning myself as well. Adapting to teaching methods was challenging, but then engagement and motivation was another challenge. Then mental health concerns of myself and my students was also a challenge. The same with the assessment integrity, because I didn't know actually who is doing what, and if they are doing that on their own or they are just using something or somebody, was a challenge as well. But then I used new ways of teaching, and then suddenly appeared that Zoom is not only the way to meet friends, but also a way of teaching. Then appeared that I met people from all over the world, including you, Elizabeth, and it was a new experience as well, and great experience. And then on the very end of the day, it helped me to focus on digital literacy and teach new uh, cohorts of healthcare workers in Poland how to use new digital software and new digital solutions to actually teach themselves and their patients and help themselves and their patients. So yeah, I think it was challenging, but at the same time, it was really, really nice adventure. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that, Maya. That's awesome. All right, we have a few more minutes. Anyone else feeling brave and like they want to share?
I'm just trying to understand. Okechi here.
Hi,
Good
Okechi.
evening, everyone. I just joined and I don't seem to know where we are. I don't know what to share.
No worries.
Yes.
We're sharing stories of during the COVID-19 pandemic, how we might have learned or taught differently, or stories of our experiences. So do you have a story that you might want to share about learning or teaching during COVID, about what you experienced?
Yes. During the COVID, I had to devise a very simple way of teaching my staff so that they could also instruct the clients we had to keep to the rules at that time. it was a bit difficult breaking down, telling them about pandemic, what pandemic meant, and letting them know the implications of not abiding, keeping to the rules at that particular point in time. It was challenging. I had to use some illustrations, some stories they knew about, just to illustrate and tell them this is what this looks like. And actually, the message got to them. Thank
That's
you.
wonderful. Thank you. Do you think you might use similar ways of teaching in the future? I'm just curious.
Oh, yes.
That's great to hear. All right, maybe we have time for like one more quick story. Does anybody want to share? Anyone else? Sarah or Maisa or Christoph, have any of you would like anything to share?
Hi all, this is Sarah. I can just share quick, and I'm sorry I jumped on late.
No worries.
I really echo the ideas around, I think there were possibilities opened up for reaching folks in a way that's accessible. That was really exciting for me. I think at the same time, we find that having to adapt during a pandemic raises challenges. Are folks connected? Are they involved? So I see that too, but I think the overall takeaway for me was increased opportunity to reach folks in a way that we hadn't before.
I totally agree with you.
And I guess another thought would be, working with so many students in different spaces. I think the pandemic also opened up educators' sense of the many challenges students do face and navigate while they're students. And so that sense of like, we're all people in this moment, trying to survive this moment and get through it. And I think that sense of almost like a trauma-informed sense of education, I think, has really altered in a lot of ways the way that folks see how the needs that students have as they try to engage. It sort of exposed us into people's lives in a different way.
I completely agree. I would imagine you have a lot of people nodding their heads in this room. Well, thank you everybody for sharing your stories. We might be sucked back very soon into or rather everyone else will be sucked back here to the main plenary session. But thank you for sharing your stories. And again, you have the link, so you can also add a story, type in a story if you still would like in the next minute or so. But otherwise, we have people coming back to the main room very shortly. Is that right, Sam?
Yep, the breakout rooms are closing and everyone will be back within 32, 31, 30 seconds.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks folks for sharing your stories. I really appreciate it. And we'll quickly walk through some of these.
And again, if you've joined late and you're not sure what's going on, send me a private chat and I'm happy to pull you into a room to get you up to speed.
Yes, and the person who's talking is Sam. Welcome back, people. We're glad that you're back. Welcome, welcome. All right, so, and actually at this point, what I want to do is turn this over for a hot minute to Zion to kind of check in and see how that went for you guys. Welcome back, welcome back. Zion, are you around back in the main room?
I am indeed.
All right.
Hello, welcome
Take it
back,
away.
everyone. Yeah, for sure. So hopefully everyone kind of got the chance to share their experiences, maybe get something off of your chest, or maybe you heard some things that from other people and thought, oh my gosh, I had the same exact experience. So yeah, I'm just curious how folks feel. Did you feel like you heard a lot of, commonalities and things that were relatable, or maybe did anyone say anything that was very much the opposite of what you felt and you were like, how is that possible? My pandemic was totally different, or something like that. Or maybe if folks had a hard time picking what story to share or couldn't think of anything. I'm curious, what happened in you guys' groups? Anyone can kind of jump in.
I can start, I guess, because it's something that I just said in the
Please.
group. But no, I think that the story at least I heard they're very emotional, obviously sometimes, and powerful, and things that really impacted us so deeply that they're still with us and kind of came out. The sticky note format, as much as I appreciate this idea of trying to get it down to 2 lines or so, it's hard to convey the depth of the pain and the emotion on a sticky note. It just, when you see it written on a sticky note, it very much minimizes it. My story, the story of the other person in the room, it seemed like both of those stories, I felt like I almost was taken back to the time and sad, and her story made me really sad. And then when you just see this little note, like, couldn't hug their daughter, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know. I know this is the way to do it, but I almost feel like they have to be edited to be more poetic or something once we're done, or to somehow have greater weight.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's definitely kind of a second challenge to, I mean, I think we all had such a kind of influx of emotions to sort of cram it all into a bite-sized package is hard, even just remembering it the first time. So I definitely feel that. And in our group, we definitely had a lot of really detailed stories. So trying to decide what to kind of leave in or leave out was a big choice. Anyone else? Don't be shy. One of the things that we talked about in our group was that, there was a shared understanding because everybody was sort of going through this new, crisis at the same time. And so even if you didn't know people, there was sort of an unspoken nod that, yes, times are crazy and I'm going through things I've never had to do. And I'm sure you are as well. So, um, you know, we all get it. Um, so yeah,
Maybe
any
we have time for
other,
one more sharing, and then we can go to our second round. Anyone else
yeah.
want to reflect?
There'll be time for more reflection as well. So don't feel like don't sweat about it.
All right, well, in that case, then we can now go to our second round. So now that some of the stories have been generated, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go back to the same group that you were with before, but you're now gonna look at another board that's on a different topic. So you'll be reading and seeing stories from other groups. And your facilitator will help you kind of read through the stories, the bite-sized stories that we have, and then come up with some themes. So I might identify common ideas or themes and start grouping those. So you have 15 minutes for this part. And you guys ready to go? Zoom back into your individual rooms? Let's hit it. And then we'll be back together again in plenary to discuss. Great. Now, and I'll reshare mine. Okay, and so the group that we're going to next is Missing Milestones. Okay, so for the folks who are in this room, we're going to read the stories from Missing Milestones. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so people don't need to squint as much, even though these are very tiny. Okay, so let's see what people put here. So maybe from the top left, wasn't able to watch daughter compete in her state track meet and felt it was the last sense of normalcy, and she felt she was powerless in the moment of COVID. So that's one story. Mother children in school when COVID hit, daughter ran track and season was cut short, restrictions in 2021 for spectators, and she qualified as a sophomore for state meet. Sounds like overcoming a lot of challenges there despite COVID restrictions. School that was hosting race wouldn't allow spectators, and the broadcast race on live stream. Parents were excited to see it, but last bit of normalcy was really abruptly taken away. Another story is COVID, December 2021. Isolated was before daughter was coming to visit her, and this person wasn't able to spend physical time with their daughter on the trip. And another story here wasn't able to be there for daughter in person to make cupcakes to congratulate while on the bus. So, I mean, looking at some of these stories, and I think some of these are related to one another. I mean, are there any common themes that you're seeing here? Anything that maybe reflects your own experiences when it comes to missing milestones?
Yes, I have one. I couldn't attend my daughter's graduation.
Mm.
And I really felt bad. And I called her, I said, look, we can't make it. We can't come. And more so, the school had told them that they were going to have a mini graduation so that there will not be crowd in the school or so many people coming around. Well, I was happy she took it well. I hope she took it well, really.
For sure.
I hope she really did take it well. So, but that was it. The COVID was not the best of experiences we had then. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Okechi. Did others also, similar to these stories and what Okechi just shared, have missed milestones of family members that were really important to you?
I'll share. I missed my own graduation.
How did you manage that?
Well, I earned my PhD while during COVID, and I didn't get to walk in my graduation. I didn't get to wear the fun stuff, so that was a bummer.
Yeah, that's a pretty big bummer. Yeah, that's a big milestone to miss. Anyone else have milestones or things that they themselves or their family members missed that were just really affected by the pandemic?
This is Sarah again. Yeah, I had, a bunch of family members with weddings that got postponed and some graduations that had to be changed or held off or on Zoom. I remember even some funerals that happened on Zoom. So I think a lot of those sort of life milestones. But then even in the little ways, just thinking back to educating students a bit, I remember, we sort of got a lot of students who coming into the university space from high school never actually had the opportunity to do some of their milestone projects like presentations in the community or sort of internships locally. And so we felt even the next year as students were coming into the university space, some students didn't quite have the experiences that we had been used to them having prior, and it took a little more preparation for them to get up to speed a bit.
Yeah, what I'm reflecting on when I'm hearing you all talk and also seeing what was put here for the story stickies. When we use the toolkit, we have potentially hundreds of stories that are being discussed, and where you're trying to start grouping them and thinking about themes and topics and how they all intersect and where they overlap and how that might resonate with their own experiences. And so I think something else I'm hearing what you are saying and also seems to be present here is there's a lot of adaptation where people try to find ways of connecting despite the pandemic, whether it's unfortunately, is it a Zoom funeral or a virtual, like joining virtually for a track meet, or whether it's trying to be there for students or for family members in ways, if you couldn't physically be there, finding ways of adapting. Would you say that would be a fair assessment that some of these stories that we're talking about now and what we're seeing here kind of reflect that adaptation?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Liz. And I was thinking as I was hearing people talk, often milestones were around children and parents, and wondering whether the children feel the same way about their mum or dad not being at the track meet versus the parents. I think there's an interesting thing there of highlighting in many ways how we've previously used milestones to be these moments of being with each other, but during the pandemic we're actually more together in some ways for certain things, but other things absent. So yeah, I was thinking about how would different members of the family think about those milestones and rituals.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other topics or themes emerging from this discussion and from your own experiences and from the stories that we are seeing here?
It's striking that a lot of these activities and events are around school or school-related functions, which isn't surprising if you think about it, because that's so much of where parents and children have social activity. But it did just strike me that most, if not all of these stories come from that kind of structure as opposed to other community kinds of functions or events or social settings.
Yeah, so maybe like school as a network, and how does that get interrupted? Oops, sorry, I'm moving someone else's sticky. But yeah, so feel free to add blue stickies for topics or themes. Remote relationships, absolutely. Adaptation, how to show up for loved ones from distance amid isolation. Yeah. And it's also like the trade-offs you're making, right? It's like you're trying to reduce risk, but you're still trying to show up, despite the challenges. Um, I think something that Claire, you said as well, is like, it's this mix of like the big moments, but also the little moments. Like the story on the bottom right, wasn't able to be there for daughter in person, made cupcakes to congratulate while on the bus. Like that moment, like small moment of cupcakes, maybe like a big deal, because it might not have been possible to connect in other ways, to be there in other ways. So these big and small moments, maybe don't have equal importance, but they both matter, into people's experiences. Any other topics or themes that you're thinking about when you're thinking about milestones and these stories that we're discussing?
I'll throw out there's two stickies that it sounds like it might possibly be from the same person based on the language, but this idea of powerlessness and like not being in control of the setting. Even though others didn't use that word, there is definitely that same theme of like, I wasn't able to do something I planned, or like that autonomy was taken away kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe under adaptation, we could include that what I said before. So adaptation to new technologies and adaptation to the fact we deal with AI and with the faces on a screen, not with the people.
Yeah, and new ways of communicating, right? Or
Yeah,
connecting.
that's for sure. So new ways of communication and new way of building bonds. That's really important thing, I think, in my opinion. So I mean, we all build a bond with people we never saw, we never touched, we never smelled. So that's really totally new experience.
For sure. Absolutely. Wow, I mean, this is a great job generating all of these topics and themes. How are you doing on time, Sam?
We have
All right,
5
we got
minutes
5
left.
minutes. Fantastic. So when we're thinking also about milestones, I mean, a lot of the stories here are related to schooling or to, you know, relationships within families, you know, between parents and children, or grandparents or other family members, yeah, and around, you know, education, you know, whether it's PhDs or, you know, school for the kids. Are there like professional milestones or other kind of milestones that in your experience also were missed, that affected you while you were living through the pandemic? Are there other types of milestones that are missing, that are not presented, that are not featured in these stories, that are also important?
Yes, I'll add that I lost some money
Oh,
because I made some investments, and because I couldn't do the business as I usually used to. I could not get the clients, as many as could come to purchase, because they could not leave their houses. So
yeah.
I lost money. I lost money then. And gradually, we are getting back there. Thank you.
Yeah, I can definitely sympathize and empathize with that. I was gonna participate in a major dance festival in South Africa, and we were gonna dance with and perform with several dance troupes from across South Africa, and it was supposed to have been in, I think it was June of 2020, with a lot of money by a lot of people invested in making this, being able to attend this dance festival, and when everything got shut down, a lot of people lost money. And I think that's also just, you know, really saddening and challenging when, especially moments where you're really looking forward to connection, to meeting with people, whether it's family reunions or a big work trip or vacation, or other moments where you were just, this is something that you were really excited about that was coming, and those plans got canceled or changed, and how much we missed out on those things because they were just canceled completely. Um, And it's I think a experience that we probably have all experienced. Are there any other milestones that people experience that are not represented here in the stories that we're looking at?
Maybe milestones is the wrong word, but I think in terms of work culture, the kind of like the weekly get-togethers or the somebody's been here for a year, and the, I just think some of those bonding things from a work perspective got lost and haven't really been replaced. And I think there's something to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you try to manufacture them, but like a Zoom
Yeah.
going away party is just not the same.
No, exactly.
Yeah, that's another challenge.
Even if
Or
you've got a funny hat on. Like we tried by using the Zoom cat faces.
Yeah, that's the best we could do. Yeah, it's really challenging. On any other milestones, so aside from work milestones or losing money or financial related milestones, are there any other milestones that you might have experienced that are not featured here as a theme?
Birthdays. So my family members experienced significant birthdays that I couldn't celebrate with them, and I experienced I don't know, we call it like a decade milestone that I couldn't celebrate with anyone.
Yeah, you can't celebrate your 70th again the following year, right? That's tricky. So it's a lot of things were missed. I mean, do you all feel like you were able to catch up on some of those milestones post-pandemic, or do you think that those milestones remain missed and you're not going to be able to recapture those milestones again?
Depends on the milestone. There's not an opportunity to like walk in your graduation again, but hopefully I'll reach another decade milestone of birthday to celebrate.
Yes. Let's hope that is true. Well, thank you everybody for participating in this extremely rapid and grossly unfair exercise in trying to squish down our combined COVID dramas into a few sentences and then discussing other people's stories. Just recognizing that we have a lot more in common in these experiences that are maybe things that are wildly different, and that we can reflect on those commonalities, and those can be useful for coming up with solutions to some of those problems. And that's what we'll discuss next. Any questions at this point? And I see, are people trickling back? I see numbers climbing. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. We're glad that you're here. So now that we have everybody trickling back into the main room, we'll actually check out the Jamboards and see what you guys came up with. Thanks again for trying out this incredibly insane approach of trying to boil down your life experiences of several years of your life during COVID into 1 or 2 sentences on a sticky note. It's a big undertaking. Rest assured, when you use the actual methodology, that's not how we capture stories. But for the purposes of just trying out the techniques, that's what we're doing today. So we're really glad that you're back. And what I was hoping to do was just very quickly kind of swan through some of the boards with you together on screen here, and we can see what people came up with for themes. Not all groups had themes, but some do. And just recognizing that if you bring enough stories together, we start seeing commonalities and differences of those stories, and those can reflect our own experiences or might represent experiences that we didn't have, but are useful for us to think about. When we're looking through, when we kind of quickly walk through some of these, I just want you to see on the blue stickies, especially for the topics or themes that emerged, what are those themes or topics that you really relate to or resonate with or stand out to you the most, either in your own discussions in your first group or in the second group. So for the first one, we have love and relationships in the time of COVID. For the facilitator in this group, were there any topics or themes that emerged strongly, or did we not have any themes that came out of this group? All right, well, we'll skip this one for the moment. For learning and teaching, so what we have here is Missing perspectives, parenting and teaching, missing perspective of navigating online etiquette, missing challenge, trying to teach or learn in the abstract. But some of the things that were featured in these stories are adaptability, focusing on the learner experience, challenges bridging interpersonal relationships through electronic means, resilience through reflection and building connections. For missing milestones, we had a robust discussion in this group. So thinking about schools and network, schools and students and children who go to school or getting an education yourself, really reflected that theme. Remote relationships, having family members that you feel really guilty for or bad for, that you're missing their important milestones. Thinking about how the pandemic really framed some of those relationships between children and parents, and as it relates to those milestones and achieving them. And showing up for them, how to show up for loved ones from a distance amid isolation. So this, I think was something that many people wrestled with, powerlessness and lack of control. So I think the phrase "I wasn't able to" was really prominent here. Adaptation, including to new technology, faces on screens, and new ways of communication and building bonds were really important. So for technology, wow, you guys generated a lot of stories. You had a lot of feelings. Tech made things easier, but also harder. Opportunities for experiences that we didn't have access to before. People said news fatigue, news and data feasting, and tech reliance, or maybe potentially over reliance, or tech reliance to the good, where people are getting access who didn't have it before. I definitely have family members that now know how to use WhatsApp that didn't know how to use it before the pandemic, right? We all have that family member. So for the first time I got COVID, okay, so we didn't have a whole lot here, but again, this really depends on how many stories that you have collected to discuss, but there's a lot here for supply chain and groceries, lack of control, guilt, putting risk to other people, essential worker taking on those risks instead of yourself who might be staying at home, adaptability and change, maintenance of supply chain of alcohol. That seems to be a crucial thing. Hoarding, and that theme was expected, but they didn't see in these stories, which is interesting. Fear and violence, having to deal with scarcity and different perspectives of scarcity of U.S. versus someone outside of the U.S. And again, that's where our geographies and our lived experiences can be quite different, or quite similar. But it's useful to reflect on both of those. And so that's great. You guys all did a great job coming up with some of these topics or themes. So I'm now going to transition back to the PowerPoint. Congratulations on getting through the interactive part of this exercise. And now when you have reflected on some of those stories and experiences, now we're going to kind of do the next part, which is talk through what, after hearing these stories, what theme or themes stood out to you the most, whether what was discussed in your group, the first round, or what themes you discussed in the second round, or what you just saw in our walkthrough. So Hui, do you want to kind of moderate this discussion?
Sorry, I was on mute. Definitely. So yeah, basically what Liz said, just take a few moments just to, oh, someone already shared. But yeah, take a few moments just to share out in the chat. And we're sort of going to be thinking out loud and talking about what you all have thought from like the various discussions in terms of like sharing your stories and synthesizing themes from other people's stories, and also just like seeing the whole playthrough just now. Okay, so we're hearing there's this like duality of like empowerment and disempowerment, networking, loss of control, adaptability, which is like definitely a theme that we're seeing connected across a lot of these stories and like possibly like disparate areas of life. Resilience, guilt, control.
I just want to shout out Jeffrey from our group, who, this isn't even the full quote, but he posted some very relevant excerpts from Albert Camus, which I thought were very moving. And he did it all without a microphone available to him. So thank you, Jeffrey, for these as well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. So Hui, when you're seeing all of these, all these topics or themes, what does this, I mean, what are you seeing that really seems to be resonating with a lot of people?
I think this sense of community, someone had mentioned like networking. Sam had just said like reimagining communities and like figuring out how to do that virtually. Liz just shared camaraderie. So I feel like there's a lot of that like connection and thread that's like tied between all of these different I guess like categories. I feel like also just like resilience and like dealing with like losing control of things is something that I'm seeing a lot. I don't know if you wanted someone to like possibly share something that they had found in the group that like relates to these themes or like a potential connection.
Yeah, maybe we have time for one person if anybody wants to share what they've reflected on or what they put into the chat.
There's also no wrong answers. I feel like this is really like the essence of it all is just like processing verbally out loud, like in community. Because like what we had discussed in my previous group was just that like there's no like it's so difficult to really condense it into
Yeah.
a couple of words. Even though you guys are all doing like amazing work, just like doing this right now. But it'd be great to just hear someone share out loud just sort of like their experience of like themes that they've noticed.
I can say something.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
Please
I
come in.
think thank you. I think it was a very good exercise because I think that it's been a very long time since this has happened. So really it's like taking some roots and like uplifting them. It was just like some emotions that you have very hidden inside of you and opening up. So that was my experience. It was going back and remembering, but also being very grateful for where we're at now. So that's what stood out from this experience, just people remembering, but also seeing the positive out of the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, this week marks the 4th anniversary since the beginning of the pandemic. I was actually having this conversation with a colleague yesterday at the end of the West Africa Ebola outbreak. Something that they did there, and also what was done after 9/11 in New York, is reading of the names of the people who passed away. But these were ritualized periods of mourning and reflection, and also like a way for people to take a moment and pause and just reflect so they can move on and heal with and move on with their lives. I don't feel like we've really had that in the COVID times, where we've had these moments of reflection as much as we could have. So I feel like exercise like this can certainly help. I mean, we're here talking about a participatory methodology that can be used for evaluating impact of the information environment on communities, but this can also bring up a lot of strong emotions and feelings and experiences, and that's important to make people feel like that's valued and it's important, and they should have that opportunity to feel all the things when they're sharing stories. So thank you for that. And maybe now we'll go on to the next prompt,
Yeah, definitely. Let's do that. So here's another round of discussion.
Oh,
So,
I'm so sorry. 1 second. I didn't see Monica had their hand up, or was that from
oh yeah,
was
I
that from
think
before?
I think Monica had her.
Monica, did you want to come in?
Unmute myself.
Oh, go ahead, Monica. I'm so sorry. I didn't see your
Okay,
hand.
that's okay. Yeah, I think it's a surprisingly effective method. I wouldn't have expected so much to be done in such a short time with so many disparate people via technology. It's really great. And maybe you're going to get to this later, but I'd like to know how these stories are going to be used or how they could be used. I also think that this form of evaluation, which, we're sort of evaluating our experiences of COVID, but I think it could be used in a lot of different contexts.
Absolutely. No, I'm really glad you brought that up, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But just to say that we're not just sharing our feelings and our stories just because it's nice to, like, it's important that we do that too. But the point of this is like, how can we fix it so that next time when we're hit with an outbreak or an emergency or something that is so incredibly destructive to like our day-to-day lives, that we need to be able to adapt in similar ways. So based on these experiences and these topics, how do you want to think about this, and how do you want to put it to the group when it comes to solutions?
Yeah, definitely. So just like what Liz said, just thinking about all of these themes that we've seen, and sort of like this community that we're building, what solutions do you all think that you might want to suggest to help us better cope with an emergency similar to COVID in the future? And this can really range from like practical things to just really anything that you're thinking of in relation to these themes. So feel free to share in the chat, and I'll just sort of talk out loud what I'm seeing. And also feel free to raise your hand virtually to sort of share any like insights or reflections that you have.
So what are you guys seeing in the chat?
Seeing unification, talking about like engagement of public health with people.
A call center
call
sounds like a
center.
great idea.
Yeah. Regular space for reflection. I feel like just talking about sort of like Monica's earlier point of just like, and like Evelyn, of just like being able to have that space to talk about like our lived experiences and not sort of just like be pushed to like, oh, like just move on. I think that's really great. Identifying community needs often, I think that's a really great theme. Listening to community voices, so just that like one-to-one connection of like really like taking the time to like invest in communities.
And Monica's making an interesting point here as well, as it relates to, you know, some of the best ideas and solutions might be generated from community level and not necessarily come up with somebody sitting behind a desk in a computer screen in a government building somewhere, right? So how do we discuss and problem solve at the community level and work our way up? And great. So thank you so much, everybody, for this. I know we're like running low on time, but the point is that this is just to whet your appetites to this thing. And you are all the very first people in the world to know that we've launched this new guide called Understanding Community Information Needs Through Stories. And it's available at the communitystoriesguide.org. And it basically uses the story analysis approach, and you can use it to address health topics, social topics, and it's designed for use by a wide range of humans in different organizations and configurations who might want to query or understand how some sort of health or social issue might be affecting people and how the information environment might be contributing to that, and maybe coming up with better solutions to address those harms, and help us come up with better solutions in the future that keep people healthy and really promote resilient societies. And so feel free to take a look. You can also scan that QR code on the right-hand side if you want more information, or go to www.communitystoriesguide.org. It's there available as a really fun online like click-through guide, or you can download the PDF if you're a PDF person. But you're welcome to take this, use it, remix it, remake it, edit it, do whatever you want to this guide and the tools that are included in the guide to make it match and work for whatever it is that you need to accomplish in your community. And I want to say a huge thank you to Hui and Zion, who were absolutely instrumental in this entire process. We also have on that website the practical example, which is what Claire mentioned at the top of the hour about working with a group of infodemic managers. So people who really were on the front lines of the pandemic, who are often health workers, dealing with people's questions, concerns, misinformation, these really damaging, harmful narratives, and how it was affecting people's health and communities. And so we basically road tested this tool with these infodemic managers. And so that report is also available on this website if you're curious to read and learn more. But we just wanted to take a massive appreciation and thank you to the entire Information Futures Lab team who have really supported this project from the very beginning. And thank you to Claire, to Sam, and to all of our IFL volunteers who are our facilitators today, and to all of you who were able to come out today for an hour and spend time with us on this. This is just a taster, but hopefully this is enough to pique your interest for you to check out the website and download it and read it and learn more. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. There's contact information on the website as well. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have as well. And we love to hear how you're using the tool if you find it useful for you and your context. And maybe I'll finally turn it over to Claire for the last words.
No, just to say thank you, Liz. And this has just been such a passion project, and watching it unfold, as I just said, I remember seeing a much earlier version of this, and to see this website and how it's come to be is really exciting. So, and to Liz's point, we'd love to hear how people might be using in different contexts, because I think there's so much to learn from one another. But thank you to Liz and Zion. This is really exciting, and wishing everybody a happy Friday and a lovely weekend.
Thanks, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday. And thanks for those of you who are joining from other parts of the world where it's your Friday evening. Have a great weekend, and we look forward to hearing how you guys use these tools. Thanks so much, and have a great day. Bye, everybody. Thanks again for